everyone, my name is Adele and welcome to Toadstool House Art. So today I'm finally going to be showing you how I painted my most recent painting. And I have Bramble here, who was my assistant through it all. Yeah, she's great. So first things first, I needed to start with the sketch. So basically the inspiration for this piece was, well, everyone else was doing fungangu, oh my god. You know the art challenge in February where everyone draws fungi? I can't say it, what is it? Fungangu? I can't do it. Oh god, I knew I couldn't do it. I shouldn't have recorded this bit. Oh dear. So, yeah, it's basically kind of where you sort of combine mushrooms and people, basically, so you're sort of making your own mushroom characters. But I was very busy at the time, so I couldn't do it. But I got these huge canvases given to me. Well, they're huge for me. They're about 61 centimeters square. Couldn't tell you what that is in inches. And I knew that when I got them, I was like, oh, I have to do these sort of like mushroom people, because I've been thinking about it for ages, but I just haven't had the time. And then when I got given these canvases, I was like, right, now I'm gonna do it. So my idea was to have this sort of, I've been calling them her sort of like a Mushroom Maiden, because you know she's not really human, she's, you know, made from the mushrooms, so I didn't want to draw her in like a dress or anything, but I kind of wanted to imply one by having the sort of the way the mushroom frills sort of peel away from her arm and her chest, sort of looking a bit like a dress. And the mushroom I based it on was from the Amanita families, specifically the sort of fly agaric, which is the red mushroom with the white spots, which pretty much everyone will recognize. Everyone has seen that mushroom. So I kind of wanted her in this sort of like a wooden glade, sort of with the sun pouring through the trees, and she's absolutely surrounded by these mushrooms, and they're sort of poking out from the undergrowth. She's just sort of sat there basking in the sun. So I did the sketch, and I did keep the background really simple, because I knew I was going to paint it with adding in a lot of texture. So I just I left it very simple in a kind of, yeah, I'll figure this out later kind of way. So for the first layer, what I really should have just done is painted this canvas yellow and left it at that. But I got a bit carried away. I added in, you can see the streaks there, that's sort of where I want the sunlight to be coming down through the painting. And this green, I just dabbed this on with a tissue. That's how you get that texture. But that was not a good idea. I should not have done this on the first layer, and you will see why later. So what I did is I printed this on 9 sheets of A4 paper, and I found that if you save as a PDF and then you print it, there's an option there, and you just click poster, and it will automatically separate your image into as many pieces of paper as it needs to. So that really, you know, speeds things up. And I just sandwiched between some dark grey graphite paper. This is only my second time using graphite paper, but it's really easy to do. So I took a metallic pencil and I just went over the entire image. And the reason I used a metallic pencil is, one, it was there. It's always floating around on my desk. But it's because as well that it's really soft. So there's no risk of ripping through the paper or damaging the canvas. That's never happened with me, but it is a lot safer with a soft lead. And because it's metallic, it's really easy to see which bits you've gone over because it's nice and shiny. So as you can see, once the graphite was down on the canvas, it was a bit tricky to see because my canvas wasn't as light as I wanted it to, so I ended up mixing up a bunch of just very thin reddy orange acrylic, and I ended up going over all the line work just so I could see it. So that's what it looks like. I don't think it actually looks too bad like this, but the parts where I'd sponged on that green, I could not see the graphite at all. So you can see her arm there and all the leaves down the bottom. I couldn't see it, so luckily I had some white graphite paper, so I just did the exact same steps I've just done, but with the white graphite. And then I put a layer of white paint just to help me sort of help the figure stand out in the front and sort of bring that forward, and so that all the colours sort of really popped when I painted on top of her. So I just went in with very, very basic colours, just sort of colouring these sort of big blocks of space, just where in the lightest version of the colour that I knew I was going to use. So I did end up painting the mushroom cap, and I realised looking at it now that I used a colour that is almost identical to the background, so I definitely could have skipped this step and just gone straight to the orange. And for the background, I wanted it to have a lot of texture to it, so I added in loads and loads of layers of green, and what I really wanted was the mushrooms to sort of be popping out of this sort of like grassy, mossy glade, so you could just see the caps, and everything else was behind them and they were green. So I spent a lot of time just sort of very carefully sort of blending out that green, so that the background, I didn't want any sharp edges on this piece at all. So these little sort of sprigs with the leaves on, I ended up painting these in so many times, because each time I went over with a new layer to do that background, I ended up covering bits up, so I must have painted them in 4 or 5 times maybe. But for this first layer, it's sort of, the coverage doesn't matter so much. I just need to get the sort of shape and everything right and where they want to go. And for the mushrooms, I actually ended up using the same colour that I used for the outline. I'd mixed up a big... I actually used a bowl. I used a small dessert bowl to mix up this sort of orange colour. And I wanted to make sure I had a lot of this particular orange colour so I could use it all throughout my piece as I was going. So it would have this sort of like nice autumn feel, and so I wouldn't run out of that orange. And for these mushrooms, I did the very sort of like nerve-wracking process of blending my paint on the canvas, which was stressful because this is not something I normally do, but it saves a lot of time. You're not waiting for anything to dry, and you can get a really smooth blend. You just have to work quickly because acrylic paint does dry pretty fast. And at first it feels like it's not going to work, but you just very carefully blend it out. But this is the first layer, so at this point it doesn't matter too much about the blending as long as it's somewhat smooth. And then I ended up painting in the sprigs at the front, because I'd missed them, and I basically just added in the main blocks of colour and the main areas of shading. So since I want the sunlight to be sort of pouring through the trees from the top left, I added highlights to her chest, on what looks like her sleeve, and sort of on her front there, and I wanted her face to be, it needed to be completely in shadow because of, you know, how large the mushroom cap on her head is. So like her whole face is in deep shadow. So I do add in more of shadow of that later. But yeah, I just did everything in a lot of layers, probably more layers than was necessary, but I'm quite inexperienced with acrylic painting still. So I would rather do, you know, a couple more layers than was, you know, like somebody who's been doing it for a long time will just be able to be like, yep, 3 layers of paint, we're done. But me, I spent a lot of this painting just figuring things out and just figuring out how to paint. And I had many times where I was just like, it's ugly, I hate it, I'm not going to be able to finish this, I can't do it. But you really just have to trust the process, and know, because it's acrylic, you can always add to it, and if anything goes really wrong, you can paint over it. So then it was time for the second layer on those mushrooms to make them nice and opaque, and I did the exact same technique. I brought in red on one side and I brought in yellow on the other side, and I blended it all in the middle with that nice orange colour. And as you can see, I immediately paint over the leaves I've just painted in, but which it isn't so bad. I'm just not used to sort of going in layers, because the way I've done it looks very illogical, but it made sense at the time, I promise. Oh, and I'm very much a big fan of using, you know, whatever's around you to make art. And so when I wanted to add texture to the background, I was like, oh, a sponge. So I just ripped off a piece of kitchen sponge and started dabbing that with green paint all over the place. And I realized that background was like far too saturated, really. The yellow was just, it was too much. So I went in with it was a light cream colour, and I used that to help blend the green and the yellow together. And of course, while I'm painting, I have the ever-watching eye of Bramble on me. And then the one time I actually go to film her, she blooming wanders off. She'd been looking cute the whole time. So then this background, oh god, this background, I am not good at painting or drawing backgrounds at all. And I'll be honest with you, I made this up entirely as I went along, just adding in lots and lots of texture, just dabbing the paint on with my brush, lots and lots of different shades of green, and just trying to blend in the bottoms of each of those mushroom caps into this sort of like, you know, mossy undergrowth layer, because it's meant to be like a, you know, if you were walking through the woods and you found like this like really pleasant glade. And then I painted the large cap, and I did exactly the same technique as I used on the smaller mushrooms, same colours and everything. So it you know, it's all cohesive and goes together. But yeah, that's nerve-wracking, because blending on a small mushroom is a lot less nerve-wracking than doing it on the big one, the one that matters, that everyone's gonna see. You know, it's gonna be the most obvious. But it worked out in the end. At first, when I put this yellow on, I was like, oh god, it's not blending, it's not blending. It does, it's fine. I was just panicking. Oh, and the little sort of curls on her chest, they needed to be brought sort of back out to the foreground, so I added on a layer of white paint before I painted them the colour I wanted them, so that made them stand out, because I really wanted to show the sunlight just catching on the edges of these and making them sort of really prominent. And then I shaded the little peeling pieces on the sort of mushroom hat. Oh, it's her head. I'm not sure, you know. I never decided. Is that her hat or her head? I guess it's her head, because she's like a mushroom person. I'll admit I didn't put much thought in it. I just thought it was pretty. So in the background, I feel that I took it a bit too far in terms of green, and I needed to add in more orange. So I took a very, very light watered down orange, and I added in these little leaves. And because the paint is so watered down, it really pushes them into the background, and I think that works really nicely. And then, you know how there's like one thing you can do to a piece, like it's kind of not coming together, and then you do this one step at the end and suddenly everything makes sense. It's usually adding in like highlights and stuff, but for this piece it was adding in all the spots on the mushrooms. I don't know why, but this sort of really pulled everything together, and I felt a lot better once I hit this point. And yeah, it just looked, once these were on, it just looked so much better. It made it look 3D. So, and then it was time to add in the sunbeams. And this is actually the second layer. I was so tentative on the first layer. I'd watered down the paint far too much and you couldn't even see it. But I was so terrified of messing this part up. It was so stressful. So what I'm basically doing is I've got just a plain wooden dowel, and I'm using that to help me draw a straight line. That's not actually touching the canvas. I'm sort of resting the brush and my hand on it to get these really straight lines. And thank goodness it worked out. I would have blooming cried. And then for the final step, to add in some atmosphere, I added in all these speckles. I used a toothbrush to add all those small ones that you can see, but I didn't end up recording it because one, I didn't know it was going to work, and two, I did not want paint all over my phone because that's what I used to film, and it got everywhere. Like, it's still all over my tablecloth, which is fine. It's a wipeable tablecloth, but it won't wipe off. So anyway, I added in all those little speckles, and then I added in some bigger ones in orange. And then lots and lots of diddy ones in some of the same orange, but then in yellow as well. And these are just meant to be sort of the little flecks that you see floating through the air that the sunlight catches on. And I added some white to the middle of the orange ones, just to make them a little sort of glowy, kind of a magical element, but kind of just this very... It's just to make it look very atmospheric with the sunbeams and these little flecks floating around the figure. Yeah, it was just a nice finishing touch, I thought. Oh yeah, and because I just don't know when to stop, I ended up adding in even little more white specks. I tell you, I was this close to adding glitter. I'm so glad I didn't. And there she is, all done. I am so happy with the way this turned out, especially since for at least 5 hours I thought it wasn't going to turn out at all. But there was nowhere in my house where I can hang it up and film it. So shout out to my mum who held this up for me in the garden while I got all these glamour shots. So I am hoping to get prints done of this. The only trouble I am having, because people have already asked me about prints, the only trouble I'm having is getting a good quality picture of it, because it's so big and there's nowhere I can hang it that's got good lighting in my house. It's very difficult to me to get a picture, but I am working on it. I might have to do it outside and like strap it to the fence. I don't know, but when I do get prints of this made, I will announce it on Instagram, so if you just follow me there, then you'll know when those are available. So I'm going to leave you with this last bit of footage of my cat who sat outside and screamed at me until I came outside and brushed her belly while she laid in a hole in the garden. So thank you so much for watching. The regular vlogs will continue next week. It's just that I had so much footage for this that it really needed to be its own video. And thanks for all the love that this painting has got on social media. And yes, any updates on prints will probably be on Instagram. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!